times, the word Athens was the symbol of democracy the world over. In those days, it rhymed with Pericles, logic, and philosophy. The Parthenon was its emblem. 2,500 years later, the Parthenon still dominates the city. It looms over the lives of the Greek people, a constant reminder of their history. Must it be destroyed before the Athenians can be free of the weight of their past? Athens has become a veritable vacuum cleaner, sucking up people's initiatives. It erases identities and scarcely makes room for all the individuals who nevertheless exist side by side. Slavs, Bulgarians, Croatians, Macedonians, and Turks, the Greeks of present-day Athens. The Greeks waited 500 years for democracy to find its way home. Democracy in Greece was only established during the 1950s. Greece is actually a very young country despite its great age. But the seething city forgets at times that it owes a great deal to those living outside Athens who helped create modern-day Greece. These people in eastern Peloponnesus have their own identity. They are the Tsakones. Other images of Greece take us back centuries and centuries. At times they are indications of solitude and isolation, maybe even ingratitude. In this Peloponnesian village, a man is playing tavli, backgammon. The game represents social interaction and friendship, but this man is playing tavli alone. He has no choice. He lives here all alone. Yet his village is not anonymous. It is the Forgotten Bastion of the Tsakones. This man of God has dedicated his life to defending the Tsakones, or rather to defending their language. Papa Ilias has written a grammar book on the language, as well as a Tsakones dictionary, and he publishes articles on its traditions. This evening, Ilias is writing the editorial for a newspaper he created. Ilias carefully weighs his words. They express at the same time a hope, a wish, and a determination.
We, the Tsakones, are aware that our language has survived for more than 4,000 years and that it is in danger. We are prepared to do everything to save it.
Certain Greeks have worked more diligently than others to liberate their country from Turkish domination. The Tsakones are of this breed. Even if today they consider themselves as Greeks, these Greeks speak a different language. Naupli and its fortress Palamidi were the scene of innumerable battles throughout history. The Russians, French, Italians, and English all clashed here to secure the supremacy of the region. The Evangelistria Church of Naupli is home to this parish priest who's a bit different. At times, he sings and talks strangely. He speaks in a language that is incomprehensible to other Greeks. Ilias is a passionate defender of the language of the Tsakones. How passionate?
I realized that our language was disappearing, and I couldn't accept the language 4,000 years old could disappear. So, with some friends, I launched a spiritual rebellion. We wanted to save our language and let other people know of its existence. We had to prove that it could be written, spoken, and used in psalms, songs, and rituals. So first, we translated the Mass and the Hail Mary. Then we translated traditional songs relating the history of the Tsakones. Our language is a Doric language, one of the most ancient in Greece. It alone is a treasure of national heritage. It has survived because our people lived in a remote corner of Greece, in the heart of the Mount Parnan Valley. We were able to survive thanks to our language and our tradition. Our culture is based on the language. If we lose our language, our people will also be lost.
Ήσανε φυλαγμένοι κατά κάποιο τρόπο στην περιφέρεια εκείνη από τις ψηλές κορφές του Πάρουνα, του Μαλεβού, του γνωστού Μαλεβού. Δεν μπορούσαν ξένος κόσμος να περάσει μέσα. Και από την άλλη μεριά, για να κρατηθούν ως φιλοί, συσπυρώνοντουσαν πάντοτε στη γλώσσα και στα έθιμά τους.
Peloponnese, 3 hours by plane from Paris or Frankfurt, 200 kilometers from Athens. The landscape here is quite a bit different from that of the capital. Here, the key word is isolation. Isolation evokes both strength and weakness. Strength, because being isolated means that a region is more likely to be forgotten during turbulent times, and also better able to defend itself, thanks to a territory that is extremely difficult to penetrate. The Tsakones have exploited this means of defense throughout their history. Isolation also evokes weakness, for it's impossible to keep up with progress, to develop business in a normal fashion, and for people to prosper. The Tsakones have overcome this handicap to try and live with dignity. Glancing through history, we realize that Tsakonia owes its survival to a natural barrier, this insurmountable cliff. The Parnan Mountains are intersected by only a few narrow canyons, a formidable defense against any invasion attempt. These cliffs give an idea of the imperviousness of Tsakonia to outside influences. This rebel land has just a few parcels of fertile terrain in the area around Leonidion, the region's capital, a patch of land stuck between sea and mountain. The town itself is crammed with indications of its long history. The grandeur of its buildings speaks of a proud people. The architecture of the middle-class homes, based on the letter gamma, combines a concern for very classic aestheticism with the exhibition of wealth. But their state of decay, if not abandoned, reveals that Tsakonia took advantage of a period of opulence which is today long gone. Leonidion is the current capital of Tsakonia, but the true historic capital is hidden in the heart of Mount Parnan. Prastos, the virtual stronghold of the history and tradition of the Tsakones. Homes built like fortresses seem to scrutinize the valley in expectation of a hypothetical enemy. Apparently well kept up and with well-sheltered alleyways, the town appears ready to welcome its owners. Peter lives in Prastos. Sometimes a mason, sometimes a laborer, Peter retired early and is happy to lend a hand with the upkeep of the city. Peter loves his town. Far from the noise of Leonidion, he is enjoying peaceful days after a life of hard work. But today, Prastos feels a little empty to him. Maria, Peter's wife, works at home and in the garden. They live in this little house that their parents passed on to them. They didn't want to move into the valley. A need for calm, probably, and perhaps nostalgia, and a lack of means as well. Today, there are only 2 inhabitants left in Prastos, Peter and his wife. The others deserted the town to go and live on the coast, in Leonidion or in Agios Andreas. The Tsakones have not forgotten the city. It remains alive in their hearts and in their memories. Four, 1, 6, 6. Peter is reading the numbers on the dice of the tavli. Solitude weighs heavily on his shoulders. He misses his friends. With Maria, Peter is the last to share his life with Prastos' prestigious past, a history that goes back to the dawn of time. For centuries, the cities of Sparta, Argos, Messina, and of course Athens fought over the strip of land between sea and mountain. The first Tsakones were contemporaries of Mycenaean glory, King Agamemnon and Menelaus. Later, the fearsome Spartans fought to conquer this territory. They even managed to invade it and to settle there. But all is left of Sparta today are a few ruins and the classics. And the Tsakones are still here. The mayor of Leonidion explains the origin of the word Tsakones.
Το Leonidion την εποχή βέβαια της επικρατήσεως των Σπαρτιατών ανήκε στη Σπάρτη.
Leonidion belonged to Sparta. The Spartans were inferior members of the Lacones people, and so were nicknamed the Lacones of the outside, the Exo-Lacones. By distortion of the name, the word became Tsakones, but we're not 100% sure of this detail. During the time of the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians even invaded the region. They destroyed the port of Leonidion. It was their way, but we've rebuilt it.
The Romans landed as conquerors in the time of Jesus Christ. They moved the center of their empire to Constantinople to create the Byzantine Empire as early as the 4th century. The Byzantines had embraced the Christian faith, whose dogma served as law for 1,000 years. The Tsakones provided excellent soldiers, and the Byzantine Empire spread its influence over the entire Mediterranean right up until the 14th century. During that period, the Tsakones discovered Christianity. And Christianity truly means something to the Tsakones. It constitutes an essential part of the identity of the region. Ilias explains this phenomenon.
The Tsakones took too long to become Christians. It took us until the 9th century. We didn't speak Greek. No one could communicate with us. So either a missionary had to learn Tsakones, or a Tsakones had to become a missionary. The Tsakones became passionate Christians, but they had to fight to defend their faith. The monasteries became veritable fortresses.
The monasteries of Elona and Caria are fine evidence of this period of prosperity and power. Indeed, during this period, Tsakonia was rich and respected. The Tsakones may not have been good seamen, but they were shrewd shipowners. They made their fortunes through maritime trade that enabled them to control fortress cities such as Mistra, although, however, one absolute despot succeeded another. At the time, their influence was such that they managed to keep the mastery of this type of town. But their supremacy was suddenly threatened with the arrival of the Turks and their Muslim faith, so intolerant at the time. The year 1453 witnessed the fall of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. The Turks became the master of the region. The Tsakones used their power to win the respect of the Ottomans. They even obtained a good number of privileges or monopolies from the sultans. They opened trading posts in the Balkans and on the Black Sea. For 4 centuries, the sultans of Istanbul ruled over the Ottoman Empire, but they weren't able to subdue the Tsakones. And finally, eastern Peloponnesus became the instigator of revolts starting from the 19th century. In 1821, the country rebelled against the Ottoman Empire, now in decline. Thanks to the power of their fleet, the Tsakones inflicted heavy losses on the Turks and arrogantly attacked and conquered the impregnable fortress of Monemvasia that had been previously part of Tsakonia. At this time in history, there were between 7,000 and 8,000 people living in Prastos. Athens only had 1,500. The Ottoman Empire had to react, but it no longer had the means. The Tsakones felt their power. In 1826, the Sultan of Istanbul sent for a great warrior, General Ibrahim, who marched on Prastos intending to destroy it. Ibrahim burned down the city, but spared one house, so he could live there for a few months. So much did he admire Prastos. Prastos wasted away. Its people mourned the death of their capital, but they ended up rebuilding it, and for all that, without living there.
Στου πραστού το κάστρο φορούν θεσσακιά κόκκινα είχαν και μαύρη φούντα μυρολογούσαν και λέγαν μη ηρολογούν και λέγαν.
The exiled inhabitants took refuge in Leonidion and made it their new capital, only returning to Prastos once in a while, making the trip up for the summer and for the Easter holidays. But that practice died out. The appeal of the city was undeniable. And with the passing years, that's how Prastos became a ghost town that the Tsakones kept alive. the once prestigious capital had become the Forgotten Bastion. Peter is the last to carry the memory of that era, which no longer means anything today. Today, Prastos counts 42 chapels or churches and 1 cathedral. All of them, public and private, are closed. Peter is concerned about this with Easter coming.
What are we going to do for Easter? How many people won't be coming this year? There's a risk no one will come. That means no Mass, no celebrations. When are we going to sacrifice the Paschal Lamb?
The idea of the town remaining deserted for Easter is unbearable to Peter, so much so that he decides to do something about it. What remains of Tsakonia today? In a little more than a century, its power has vanished. Borders have been created. The fortresses are no longer of any use. Other Greek shipowners have taken over. The city moves at a frantic pace compared to Prastos, but Leonidian reveals what Tsakonia has become, an outlying province. In the lapse of 4 or 5 generations, it was a hard fall. For 30 years, the old photographer of Leonidian has witnessed people's efforts to survive here. His work consists of capturing moments to make them part of the collective memory. Memory of a poor people working in the fields or out at sea, but this time coastal fishing, and the rest is just subsistence economy. The inhabitants of the region were forced to get used to managing on their own, transporting necessary goods by sea and carrying supplies on their backs and on the backs of animals into the interior and into the mountain. The mountains of Parnon, that were impenetrable ramparts long ago, have become walls which imprison. Papa Lambros is a humble village priest, humble but much appreciated by his flock. Lambros spares no effort to help his parish live to the rhythm of the divine liturgy and religion. Peter is very happy to find Papa Lambros. Peter still has this idea firmly set in his head, but isn't quite sure how to approach the matter. They begin talking about trivial things.
Peter, how was winter for you?
Oh, cold, Father. Cold. We froze. I spent the whole winter alone with my wife. We see almost no one. It was freezing, boring. And you, how was it for you? Have you seen a few people come by the church?
Oh, the winter passed without too much problem. Always same people, women of course, some old folks.
But don't the young people come to the church?
No, not really. They prefer to go to the cafe and have a little fun.
Do you think they're going to stay in the country?
Well, there's a good chance. They find a little work around here. Their parents leave them the business. That's what keeps them going here. They forget some of our language and our customs, but they stay.
Father Lambros, I don't know how to tell you this, but we're a little concerned in Prastos. I'm afraid that no one is going to come, that there won't be a celebration for Easter. Could you come to do a little Mass up there?
I have to think about it. I'm not really allowed to. I have to ask 2 or 3 of my superiors. I honestly don't know what to tell you.
Peter has come into town for a specific thing, but he can't help from visiting the cafes, shaking hands, and getting the news of the capital from his friends. Consumerism has arrived full force in Tsakonia. Adults, children, and the elderly aren't much of a problem, but keeping youth here is a preoccupation. Athens is very appealing to those who dream of tasting the excitement of a big city. Tsakonia isn't an exception. The older generation refuses to leave the country, and they get involved in activities that appeal to the retired or to those who've given up looking for work.
Κάνει ο πρόεδρος, ο Σούστος, ο Νικόλας.
Βροχή, έβαλες πολύ. Καμιά ώρα πολύ νερό.
Peter has met up with his friend Yannis Soursos to finally play a game of tavli the way it deserves to be played. Yannis is an experienced player, but Peter's had time to practice his moves, and luck is on his side. It looks like Yannis will be paying the drinks, but it doesn't matter. The two friends are enjoying themselves. The Easter celebrations are approaching. The whole region is preparing for the event. From morning till evening, the bells ring out in all the villages, as if the parishes want to remind the faithful that now is the time for prayer and repentance. Of course, Easter is a demanding and hectic time for Papa Lambros. He too feels a little alone facing his daily obligations. His parish is far from being rich, and he has to organize everything himself. But this year too, he'll pull through. It is clear that the Orthodox ritual is marked with a decorum that creates respect. And perhaps more so in Greece than anywhere else, the finesse of the work and the richness of the decoration symbolizes the significance of the religion in the culture. Particularly here, we must speak of a certain osmosis between the nationalist spirit and religion. For the Tsakones, religion has been the link between the people and their history. Once a year, on Easter Friday, the cross of each village church is carried in an evening procession through the city. In the course of this unique event, the cross precedes a catafalque in which is placed a precious piece of embroidery called the epitaph that represents the body of Christ. Papa Lambros prepares his parish's catafalque and places the epitaph in the spot that it will occupy on Holy Friday. Papa Lambros has an especially heavy schedule today. He is baptizing a 3-year-old child in this magnificent monastery on the road to Prastos. The ceremony is simple when it involves a baby. But for this 3-year-old initiate, it's a little more complicated. Sometimes, being born into the spiritual life doesn't occur without some difficulties of a practical order.
Να σας ζήσει. Ευχαριστούμε. Να σας ζήσει. Παντάξει κουμπάρι. Σταμάτη. Πρόεδρος Πνεύματος Αγίου. Αμήν. Πρόεδρος Πνεύματος Αγίου. Αμήν. Μπράβο, μπράβο. Τελειώσαμε στα μετάλλια. Περίμενε. Τελειώσαμε.
Agnus Dei. The Easter ceremonies refer to the Lamb of God, to innocence, and to the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. In the land of the Tsakones, it's also remembering the sacrifices and injustices that many in this land have endured. Today Peter is happy. Papa Lambros has found a few hours to dedicate to Prastos.
Σήμερον κρεμάτε επί ξύλου, when είδασιν την γην κρεμάσας. Κρεμάτε επί ξύλου, when είδασιν την γην κρεμάσας. Στέφανον εξακανθών περτίθεται ξύλου, που ενίδασιν την γην κρεμάσας.
The old parish priest couldn't bring himself to abandon the Forgotten Bastion that day. Prastos had its Easter celebration. One injustice has been amended. Around here, the old folks enjoy themselves and hardly notice the time passing. They've maintained their ways and their old customs. They live their present, living in the past. From time to time, they give in to the current trends and find themselves lingering over Lampsy, the popular TV soap that has run 1,000 episodes. In the city, however, the two generations seem a world apart, even though they live side by side. The young are concerned about what the future holds for them. The youth have gathered to watch the basketball game of the year. Olympiakos is destined to win the European Cup. It's an exciting, electrically charged atmosphere. What can a region whose maritime power has all but vanished offer its young people? A region whose jobs and job prospects are precarious. A region whose wealthy have left to invest their fortunes elsewhere.
I live near Melana, one of the 9 great villages that have forged the history of the Tsakones. Here we still speak the language together. I am a teacher, and I teach the language in school. We really are trying to teach it to our children. It's important that they learn. Some eagerly accept it. Others, though, are more interested in the modern languages.
Milio Kunea is also involved in the choreography of ancient dances, like this dance that is said to have been inspired by the labyrinth of the Minotaur. Milio even writes children's plays in Tsakones and gets her students to act in them so that they can soak, if only for a moment, in the sound of this amazing language which other Greeks don't even understand.
Όχι, βγαίνουν, όχι ακόνι, έχονται κάπως εσύντε. Οπά πραγιάν το Λιγερία, οπά τα μπλεύρα. Είναι η κάτσι τσεράκου, τσιχαμι πάει να μαψούχα όταν συμμαζούμε. Σάμα τσιζούνι προκομμένα, αλλά έτου, επέκα να βοηθούν τον ερήντε, επένει μοναχάς. Καλέ ξημέρωμα, τσαέωνι, τα τζέανα μου.
Some young people from the area also make an effort to conserve the memories of the past. Dimitris and Irene gather ancient objects that they collect for a small museum. Their collection is impressive. Almost every single tool that was used for working in the field or in the home is part of the inventory.
Ουσιαστικά ξεκίνησε σαν αστείο. Πάνω στο αστείο λέμε ξεκινάμε να φτιάξουμε ένα μουσείο.
In the beginning, it was a game. We would go around to people's homes and they would give us objects. Then it became a real project and we created this museum.
Να δείξουμε και να μάθουμε, να δείξουμε στους άλλους και να μάθουμε κι εμείς την ταυτότητά μας, την τσακώνικη ταυτότητά μας.
If the house was empty, we would just take the objects.
Well, in fact, we used to steal them.
The city of Kastanitsa is probably the closest to a Tsakones city of the last century. Kastanitsa boasts the most beautiful altarpiece in the region. This masterpiece was offered to the city by Catherine of Russia as an expression of gratitude for the devotion of its people. But malicious gossip affirmed that she had been carrying on with a prominent figure in town. A town 800 years old, according to its inhabitants. It would be a shame if the city were altered in any way and lose its charm. Everyone seems determined to protect it. Yannis Xingos, the town's mayor, is passionate about the preservation of his village. He won't even tolerate a fountain that's slightly kitsch. He thinks it ruins the town's aesthetic appearance. He has a theory that he'd like to see put into practice.
Our villages are crammed with architectural nightmares that cost people a small fortune. We should restore our ancient homes and build new houses respecting the architecture of the region. In this way, we'd be able to live in a traditional environment and offer tourists a truly original decor. Greece has no technology to bring to the European Union. It can only offer its history.
Kastanica has been able to conserve the true character of the ancient villages of Mount Parnon. This is probably harmful to its economic development, but everyone here is convinced that the town will derive some benefit from tourism. Tourism, the magic word. The Tsakones working in the industry offer a wild, unspoiled coast, ideal for visitors from the capital. Most of the land bordering the sea has been purchased by wealthy Greeks and foreigners. Thus the scenery is protected, but it is nearly impossible for developers to build tourist compounds near the beach. Will the financial benefits of luxury tourism be enough to create new jobs for the young or bring in significant revenues to local businesses? What a terrible dilemma. Must the area allow its coastlines to be disfigured for profits from tourism, or must it just watch its people leave? The mayor of Kastanica has wonderful intentions, but this house in Leonidion can perhaps serve as a good example of the realities. Two Tsakones women from Athens bought it at a very good price, intending to move here and to renovate the place. They never found work that would make it possible for them to live here, nor were they able to get any assistance from the administration to carry out the work on their property, and they came up with even less money to renovate it. Every spring during the Easter period, the Greek Orthodoxy relives the same battle. That of the injustice of death and disappearance versus resurrection and rebirth. The eternal battle between good and evil takes on a very particular aspect in the land of the Tsakones. The Easter celebrations are the perpetual repetitions of a true ancient Greek tragedy, the tragedy of the life of Christ, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. In the hearts of the Greek people, Easter also symbolizes the tragedy of their own existence, the death of their country, followed by its rebirth, the enslavement of a people and their revolt. Thus, the Greeks combine these two events into one and the same celebration. For more than 400 years, Greece lived under Muslim domination. The faithful mourned the death of their country and that of the Son of God. At the stroke of midnight on Easter Saturday in Tsakones country, a wild wind tears through the region. It's time to put an end to defeat, destruction, and death. The entire region celebrates the victory of Christ over death. At this moment, the people launch into ceremonies that are both Christian and pagan. Each family has made little paper hot air balloons. A candle or brasero ensures combustion, and hundreds of balloons lift into the air. Everywhere in town, at any moment, amateur demolition experts risk being wounded from setting off firecrackers and dynamite, or just from being too drunk. Some years, this night of madness results in injuries and even deaths. Yet the same celebration has been taking place for decades. The Easter celebration has its share of lunacy. There is rage in the joyful atmosphere. There is also the lust for life among the young who are anxious for the past to catch up with the future. Is this the remnants of the warrior spirit of the Tsakones, or just outbursts of energy that no one cares or dares to control tonight? Will the new generation resist the temptations of modernity, or will it aspire to a lifestyle dictated by its great metropolis neighbor? No one knows the answer today, and few people even ask themselves the question. The faith of those who believe in the future of the Tsakones remains strong, and the invincible warriors of East Peloponnesus could have a future after all.